The House of Seven Gables. This is a name that many have heard mentioned from time to time. The most common association is with the novel written by Nathaniel Hawthorne in 1851. In actuality, this Salem landmark is called the Turner Ingersoll Mansion. Built in 1668 for Captain John Turner, the house has stood through both social and economic changes in Essex County. It is the oldest surviving mansion on the North American continent. By looking to the past, we can see how such a house and its occupants have affected Essex County. Captain Turner was a merchant who built his home on Salem Harbor. At the time, Salem was no more than a group of settlements on the water. But Salem was growing in importance in trade. Turner was the son of an indentured servant who had worked as a lowly shoemaker. Captain Turner rapidly built up his wealth as a merchant. He was aided by his cousin, also named John Turner, who owned a sugarcane plantation in Barbados. Barbados is a small island off the northern coast of South America. It was settled in 1625 by Captains John and Henry Powell, who found the island empty of natives. Henry Powell initially brought 10 slaves over, and in time the slave population grew until Barbados became part of the Triangle trade. Ships from Europe with manufactured goods would trade for slaves in West Africa. The slaves would be shipped to Barbados and other Caribbean islands, as well as to the 13 colonies to work on sugar plantations. The sugar from these islands was shipped to the colonies, who then traded it with Europe for manufactured goods such as rum and weapons. The Triangle trade is what Captain Turner made his fortune in. Having family in Barbados was a huge advantage, and he became one of the wealthiest men in the Commonwealth. He owned many ships and built a wharf and warehouse on the property. Some of Turner's profits went to benefit Salem public schools, and the man served as a selectman, constable, juror, and on special committees. When Captain Turner died in 1680 at the age of 36, he owned 6 homes, 200 acres of land, and several ships. His mansion had become semi-public and offered offices and meeting places for town business. In the 1600s, Salem was becoming more densely populated, and the Turner House was at the center of it all. After the death of Captain John Turner, his widow's new husband, Captain Charles Redford, controlled the family fortune. Through bad decisions and poor business skills, he ran the family into debt. When Redford died, Captain Turner's son inherited the house and land. Colonel John Turner restored the family fortune through prosperous trade with the southern colonies and the Caribbean. He acquired many acres more of land and renovated the house lavishly to reflect his high society status. With the family fortune at an all-time high, in 1742, John Turner III inherited the house. Turner had been left a house in the center of Salem trade and a fortune that had been painstakingly maintained by his father and grandfather. However, he thought that the house was too old-fashioned for everyday use, and had no interest nor will to continue the family business. In Turner's eyes, he was the 3rd generation of a prominent Salem family, and was determined to live the life of an English gentleman. To fulfill this dream, he became an Anglican and a Tory and built a more fashionable house in the center of town. Not only did John Turner III disregard family traditions and offend his Congregationalist and patriotic neighbors, he ignored the trade business and lost everything. Turner then turned to his friends to help him find employment. Using his father's good reputation, he managed to secure a job as a naval officer and tax collector. By 1772, it was too dangerous for a Tory to be a tax collector in the rebellious town of Salem, for fear of being tarred, feathered, and driven out of town. Even after Turner resigned from his job, it was only his father's respected reputation that kept him from this very fate. Now without any form of employment, by 1782, John Turner was forced to sell everything he owned to pay off his debts. The family house was sold to Captain Samuel Ingersoll. By the time of Turner's death, he was living in rented lodgings. The £10,000 fortune he had inherited over 40 years prior had been reduced to £59, mostly accounted for by the clothes on his back. Although John Turner III was uninvolved in his family's role in Salem trade, and was not well viewed by his neighbors, The Turner House was still seen in a positive light due to the economic importance of his forefathers in trade. By the 1790s, Salem was the sixth largest American city and was world famous as a seaport. It was a significant participant in the China trade. Salem and other Massachusetts harbors shipped out weapons, manufactured goods, and food to present-day British Columbia, Washington, and Oregon, where they were traded with Native Americans for animal furs and skins. These skins were then taken to China to be traded for tea, silks, and porcelains. This lucrative trade route was dominated by Massachusetts and active until the early 1840s. The China trade accounts for many of the expensive goods present in the Turner House. There are many gold and copper items, both very rare and expensive. An inventory taken in 1742 valued the property of Colonel Turner at over £10,000. Luxuries such as a silver cup washed in gold and a hammock in the kitchen filled the house. The Turners flaunted their wealth. Their parlor was verdigris, painted with copper paint that turned green over time. The front door has dozens of nails bent into it. This type of door was expensive because the nails could not be reused, and it served absolutely no practical purpose. The family often threw elite parties for the merchants of the town, records of which can be found in diaries of the time. Socially, the Turner Ingersoll mansion affected ways of life in Salem. It was bigger and better than most houses of the time. The presence of the many gables themselves shows the lavish symbolism of the house as a trademark of the merchant family's commercial wealth. When the Turner House was built, it was bigger than any other house in Salem. It was a high gentry house that introduced to Essex County new ideas about domestic living. The wealth of the Turner House displayed a new way of life in Salem and the country. The House of Seven Gables is not just important because it has a novel written about it. Since its construction in 1668, its occupants have made an impact on Salem socially and on its trade industry economically. The staggering wealth displayed within increased the standards of living in Salem. The House of Seven Gables is still a landmark today that represents the ever-changing Salem culture of the 1700s.